economy, abortion, the border, issues that matter to you. AZ's On the Fence. Now here's your host, Drew Grunwald.
And welcome to AZ's On the Fence. I'm your host, Drew Grunwald, and today's show features Mason Gates running for Scottsdale City Council. He is a very driven individual who has an impressive resume for a younger council candidate, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. Mason attended ASU, was awarded a 4-year scholarship with the U.S. Army ROTC program, and was part of Edson Entrepreneurship and Innovative Institute. He graduated summa cum laude and a National AP Scholar and an academic letter recipient. Mason is a serial entrepreneur and really understands businesses. He's eager to be your next Scottsdale City Councilman. Also joining me on the fence today is Scottsdale mayoral candidate Lisa Borowski. Lisa is a lifelong Scottsdale resident, and she was compelled to run for Scottsdale mayor because she's concerned about the poor decision-making by the current mayor and council, and she feels they're putting the quality of life at risk. Lisa is about quality developments, common sense traffic solutions, a vision-based planning for the future of Scottsdale. She wants to rein in the wasteful spending and budget overruns, business development, and hospitality. She also has a priority for public safety. This is sure to be an informative show, so let's get to it. Mason Gates is running for Scottsdale City Council. Mason, thank you for joining me on the fence today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And before we go any further, real quick, I just want to make something clear. So I actually didn't graduate from college. It's all high school distinctions, but I did attend Arizona State University, was there for a year, majored in finance, was looking to pursue commercial real estate as a broker after college, and I got that opportunity, so I went ahead and just pursued it.
Excellent. Yeah, well, a college education is by no means a prerequisite for being president, governor, city council person, whatever. It's about passion and ideals and leading the city that you represent in a way that your constituents want. So, good luck in that. What are a couple of things you really want the listeners to know about you?
Resiliency as number one. I would say just determination. I mean, pure grit. Somebody who's not willing to sleep until a job is done. I think it's important that you have people who work hard, people who have seen success in the private sector. Me personally, I started 3 businesses before I was 18. And, I've chaired a nonprofit when I was 16. I've worked on political campaigns dating back to 13 years old. So I've been around, and I know what it means to work. I know what it means to juggle multiple different things at once, and I know how to be efficient. And I think the most important thing about, having business experience, especially on the ownership side, is you have to be fiscally responsible. The number one issue in Scottsdale right now that we need to address and we need to really focus our time and energy on is public safety. Public safety is the number one thing because Scottsdale, 25% of our budget it comes from tourism. If there's a lot of crime happening here, especially crimes like the Chilean gangs that were breaking into homes just a few months ago, that's something that turns tourists away from coming to our city. Moreover, I think right now where we're at, I'd like to think that public safety is good. I'd like to think that I feel safe in Scottsdale. But the problem is the policies that are being pushed by a lot of the members on the current city council are not going to keep it that way. And so what I'm focused on is preservation. This is not a campaign for change. I'm not looking to make drastic changes. The only change we need is a change in leadership because the decisions that are being made right now are the exact same decisions that I've seen happen in horrible cities that I've lived in, like Kansas City, like Tempe. And so what I say to people is that this is Scottsdale, right? We don't cater, we attract. And I think there's a distinction that ought to be made there because people, they come here and they visit, but that doesn't mean that they have a right to live here or that they have a right to stay here necessarily, right? This is, at the end of the day, this is an exclusive community. This is an affluent community, and this is an exclusive community. And I think, if anything, we should definitely encourage people to live here, but that doesn't mean that we need to cater to people to let them live here.
So inclusion is a really big thing in today's media. But what do you say to people who listen to this and go, what do you mean Scottsdale is an exclusive city? What do you mean it's affluent? I aspire to live in Scottsdale. Does that mean that Scottsdale's not for me?
Actually, what I love what you just said there at the end. You said you want to live in Scottsdale. You're exactly right. People want to live in Scottsdale. But just because you want to live somewhere, just because you want something, doesn't necessarily mean that you are entitled to it. And I think this is the disconnect that a lot of members of our society, particularly from my generation, which is Gen Z, millennials especially, this is true, they have this overwhelming sense of entitlement, as if the world owes them something. And they make these baseless claims that boomers, have ruined our economy and so on and so forth. And sure, I'd say, to a certain extent on the governmental side, yes, I think some of the legislation, some of the regulations they've done, I think, yes, they have harmed our economy more than they've done good. But I also know the work ethic of the baby boomer generation. I understand it. I work in buildings with people who are 60, 70 years old that are still working, 60-hour work weeks. And that's at that age. I mean, I work like hell. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have this sense of entitlement that I deserve to live up off Lone Mountain Road in a $5 million home. I understand that, and I'm willing to accept that. And when I hear, about those homes, it makes me desire to want to live up there, right? It makes me want to be there. But again, it doesn't mean that I'm entitled to live there. Now, the difference between Scottsdale, Phoenix, Tempe, right? If you want to be coddled by the government, I mean, Phoenix and Tempe are right around the corner, and they will happily do that. But it's funny because even though they have more supply than necessary, I still see the argument from residents all the time. Oh, there's not enough affordable housing. Well, what is affordable housing? I mean, are we talking about government subsidized Section 8 housing? Because that is not what Scottsdale is. And the only way to remain a pristine destination for tourists from around the globe is to remain the affluent and exclusive community that we are. And if we just, cater to everyone, then we lose that character, that unique, rich character that separates us from the rest of the valley.
I mean, we're not Beverly Hills, but think about it. Does Beverly Hills have homeless shelters? If they do, we don't know where they are. We haven't heard about it, right? So Scottsdale, in your vision, you're not trying to change Scottsdale. You're trying to preserve it, and
Correct.
You want to preserve in your mind, and possibly for those listening, you want to preserve that unique characteristic of Scottsdale as being affluent and being maybe more selective. And if you want to live here, you're going to have to earn it.
Exactly. I would 100% agree with that. And the reason why is because, and I don't want to say it's this like snobby, stubborn attitude. I mean, I like to think that I do relatively well for my age, but I'm by no means am I, a millionaire. And so what I would say to that is I accept reality for what it is. And one of the biggest conversations that we have here in Scottsdale is, well, there's just not enough affordable housing for these people and that people and that people and young people and blah, blah, blah. The reality of the situation is just because mom and dad live here doesn't mean that you get to live here as well. I mean, the part of growing up is you have to live on your own. You don't get to live next door to mom and dad. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that reality. I think we need to take a step back and accept that Scottsdale is different for a reason. And you're exactly right. Beverly Hills, I mean, they're a different community than LA. And so when we start to allow this influx of population, and this ties back to the argument that's very frequently brought up, which is overdevelopment, particularly the really rubber stamping of high density housing. What that does on a long-term basis is not only detrimental, to the economy, but I would say our overall budget is harmed by that because, the strain on city services actually goes up. And there were studies done on this, particularly in Maricopa County, where they analyzed, is it good? I mean, do the property tax reassessments, right? Do the increased sales tax, et cetera, do all the new tax dollars that we receive from that rapid influx of population, does that actually benefit our economy long term? And the answer is no. And we know that definitively from this study because you talk about, we talk about public safety. Public safety, it goes down with the increase in population, with the deterioration of housing. I mean, we continue to approve these cookie cutter apartments that are not, what Scottsdale is about. Scottsdale is about being unique. Scottsdale is about being exclusive. And that's not like exclusive in the way that like you can only live here if you're a certain type of person. It's exclusive in the sense that you have to, basically attain a level of affluent status to live in Scottsdale. And again, I know it sounds mildly snobby, but the reality is, I mean, there's 3,300 available housing units in Scottsdale right now. I know I lived in Tempe in a 6-bedroom house. I paid more in that house than I did living in Scottsdale now in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so I think what we need to realize is part of the problem is people aren't willing to really seek it out. They don't want to do the work. They want it to just be handed to them, right? And this is the conversation of like, you give an inch, they'll take a mile. And that's why I always see this stuff in Tempe from residents saying, oh, there's not enough affordable housing. What is affordable housing? I mean, if people had it their way, really, they would have free housing. They'd have free college, free housing. But that's not the world we live in. Things cost money. And just because you want something doesn't necessarily mean that you get it.
You know, when I moved to Arizona in my early 30s, I had a goal of living in Scottsdale. I had heard about the town, and I just had this goal. And so I had something to work for, and I worked hard, and I attained it. When I moved to Arizona, I moved to Mesa. I lived there, got a good job, bought a house. The economy did well. And over time, I found a place in Scottsdale I wanted to live in and had a house built and moved here. So, I mean, I completely understand with what you're saying. And it was something to strive for. You're right. Affordable housing in Scottsdale is different than affordable housing in Mesa or Tempe or Phoenix. And just because you want to live somewhere doesn't mean you have the right to do it. And if Scottsdale is to maintain, in your vision, that exclusivity, well, a lot of people who live here because they want that exclusivity. They like living up in Troon, or they like living, near Camelback and being able to enjoy what Scottsdale has to offer. They probably, like you said, even children of Scottsdale residents don't necessarily get to live on their own and get to live in Scottsdale unless they're renting an apartment or have roommates. So it happens for all of us. Have goals and work for them. Very interesting perspective. I'm going to take us into the break right now, and when we come back, more with Mason Gates, Scottsdale City Council. You're listening to Arizona's on the Fence, your nonpartisan radio show for those who have not decided who they want to vote for and really want the straight scoop from the candidates themselves. Good luck to you, Mason. We'll be right back after the break, and we've got some more questions for you. Thinking about selling your home but unsure about the current market and the value of your home? Call the experts at A2 Luxury Real Estate. The team has over 50 years experience in real estate, appraisal, and finance. Having the right team with the right experience will help you make the right decision when it comes to selling your home. The pinnacle of luxury real estate starts with A2 Luxury Real Estate. Visit us at a2luxre.com or call 602-888-1433, Realty One Group. You know, Mason, in the first segment, we talked about Scottsdale, maybe the exclusivity of Scottsdale, and how living here is a privilege, not a right. Some of the topics that you definitely are concerned about, and and the reasons why you're running for Scottsdale City Council. I know you love the city, and I know you love living here. But I know public safety is a concern for you. When it comes to Scottsdale, what does public safety mean?
Yeah, so unlike a lot of the current city council and a lot of the candidates, for better or for worse, they haven't had the unique opportunity that I have, where I've gotten to see, really firsthand what some of these bad performing cities have in terms of public safety, right? Like, I've lived in Kansas City, and Kansas City demographically is one of the worst cities for crime in the country. I've also lived in Tempe. Tempe is a college town. It should be a safe place for students to go, and their only stress should be what they're going to get on their next test, right? But no, they have to worry about the rampant crime that runs wild there. I can recall a certain instance where I actually was moving my girlfriend at the time. I moved her into her apartment, and this is right across from a police station. We were talking less than a mile off of campus. And the day I moved her in, broad daylight, midweek, there were people doing heroin outside the apartment. And it's just the complacent attitude of the elected officials there, who really, push it down all the way to LEOs, is insane. I chatted with an LEO, or law enforcement officer rather, and they said to me that I believe they said that it wasn't a crime to be high in public. It's not a crime. You could just be high on any drug, that they can't arrest somebody just because they're high. Now, I don't know if that's actually the law or not, but the fact that a police officer said that to me, it tells you what you need to know. Every morning I'd get on the road, and there's zombies. It's 8 a.m., walking around. It's disgusting. It's filthy. It smells horrible there. I never felt safe. It didn't feel like a place where I could tell, my girlfriend, hey, feel free to walk there by yourself. No, I had to walk her wherever she went because I didn't feel as though she would be safe to walk around at night. Now that really concerns me.
Yeah, well, public safety, I guess if a police officer tells you that it's not against the law, even if it is, it sounds like they're not enforcing it. And
Right.
Why have laws on the books if they're not enforced? If our police force is arresting people and our prosecutors are just letting them go, walk on the street, that doesn't work either. So it's one thing to have the laws on the books, it's another thing to enforce them.
Right.
I know another concern of yours for the city of Scottsdale is the fiscal responsibility or the fiscal recklessness that's going on. In your opinion, what is some of that recklessness, and how do you propose fixing it?
Yeah, so a lot of the budget overruns that I've been taking notice of are attributed to oversight. I mean, it's pure and blatant oversight and a complacent attitude that I'm seeing not just from the council but also a lot of the city staff members. Now, what I know is I work in the business world. I've been successful in the business world, and I know that if I go 560% over budget on something like they did with the recent sewer project, I'm fired. And if I'm not fired, my company is failing. That's how it works. And so what I take issue with is that the city council, they just raised the salary of city manager Jim Thompson from $375,000 a year to $390,000 a year. And then you take into account benefits, you're over $500,000 a year. We are in a economic crisis on not just a municipal, but a federal level. I mean, inflation is up 21% over the last 4 years. This is ridiculous. So I don't understand why we are continuing to push this idea that it's acceptable to first of all spend all this money at an unprecedented rate, and then second of all ask taxpayers for more money like they are this fall on the ballot. Now, as far as what's going to happen with that ballot measure, there's a proposition to increase the sales tax by 0.15%. You're going to hear it euphemized to you in a lot of ways. The reality of the situation is your sales tax is going down 0.2% regardless of if that passes or not. If it does pass, then your sales tax only goes down 0.05%. But it really should be going down 0.2% because they're trying to push a new tax. I don't mind paying taxes to an extent because I understand the value of taxes for public services and the limited government that we need in our country. However, when I'm taking notice of the fact that they're irresponsibly spending the money that we're paying to the pot, I take issue with it. And I think it's ridiculous that I should continue to encourage that behavior, so to speak. I mean, you look at the Police and Fire Training Center, and I greatly respect our first responders. However, $31 million over budget. I mean, what are we doing here? And then you've got, $6 million over budget on a Miller and Osborne roundabout. And that was because they were using surveys from 2019, outdated, and they just didn't think to update them. There were some shallow lines that were buried. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I can't sit by and watch it anymore. And knowing the energy that I have, the veracity, right, the lack of sleep that I like to pride myself on, I know that I'm the person for the job. I know that I'm the person that's going to be the one that really wants to solve these problems and figure out why we're spending the money and how we fix it.
It's interesting because I think people who live in Scottsdale enjoy what living in Scottsdale, being able to tell people I live in Scottsdale, kind of what that means without coming out and saying it. You come right out and say it. Scottsdale is exclusive. Scottsdale's fancy. I'm not trying to be a snob, but the city is what it is, and the people who live here want to live here for that reason, so let's keep it that way. So, people might cringe, but that's a politician for you that's trying to, smooth everything over and make what they say acceptable to everybody, when in reality, let's call it what it is. People who live in Scottsdale like the fact that that is a destination address. It's something that people aspire to live in Scottsdale from around the country and around the state. And it's nice to have somebody who can just come in and call it what it is. And I think a lot of folks are going to enjoy your approach. You're not trying to soft pedal the fact that Scottsdale is a little more affluent. And you have people in Arcadia and the Biltmore area that might be saying, hey, we are too, but they're just a neighborhood within a city as opposed to Scottsdale, really being that city and that destination. Now, we've got a lot of growth going on. We've got growth north of the 101 loop. There's some desert areas that have now been purchased and the development is coming. We've got an Optima going up at Scottsdale Road in the 101. It's going to be more of a high-rise. We have the new center at Cavasson. Any more big projects coming up that you're aware of? And as a city council person, would you be in favor of additional projects like that, or do we need to slow that type of development down, in your opinion?
Yeah, so right now there's 15,000 housing units that are either under construction or in the pipeline to be constructed that have been approved by this councils before. That's problematic, right? I mean, you look at the city of Scottsdale. Right now, there's not a single parcel of land that I know of that is zoned for high-density development. And so that means that every development is required to go through the city council to be voted on. And what you said is exactly right. I mean, I'm not here to pander. I'm here to see it and call it for what it is. And for better or for worse, it is an exclusive and an affluent community, as I mentioned multiple times. People talk a lot about how we need to make it more affordable. No, we don't. And moreover, I would dare to say that it's very funny that the same council members that blame the budget overruns on inflation say that the only problem with housing in Scottsdale is that we don't have enough of it. Have they ever stopped and considered that maybe inflation is playing a role in that? Or have they ever stopped and considered that maybe supply isn't the problem, right? So when it comes to the issue of density, no, I'm not in favor of developing more density because, again, at some point, I mean, this is my home. I have a fresh perspective of I've lived in cities that are not as nice as Scottsdale. I've worked my tail off to move to Scottsdale to live here. This is where I intend to get married. This is where I intend to raise a family. And there's a reason for that. This is a safe community, right? Like, I mean, and it's not going to be if we continue to allow more high-density development to just run rampant and just rubber stamp it. And, a good example of this is like just a few months ago, there were Chilean gangs breaking into homes at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. I mean, people can't even go to dinner without feeling safe and secure. That's problematic. And so, when that's happening, it's funny because I see, Councilwoman Tammy Caputi, and I'll say it by name. I'm not afraid of it. She's sitting up there laughing about it. She thinks it's a joke. I mean, people don't feel safe. And the problem is they need somebody on council who is going to sit there and they're going to take their concerns seriously. I will take their concerns seriously. I'll fight tooth and nail because I've seen how bad it can get in certain cities, and I don't want it to turn into that. I mean, Phoenix just got ranked among the top 10 worst cities to purchase a home in due to density. I mean, it's like you can't maintain any home value, so there's no equity in your property. Crime is rampant, public drug usage. There's small business owners got together, sued the city of Phoenix because they were so negligent about moving the homeless people away from their businesses. I mean, these are the problems that we're going to have. So if elected, I will enforce an updated 2020 plan where we not only overstaff the police by 20%, but we overpay them by 20%. I mean, by the time I'm done, we will have more police than we know what to do with, because I would much rather have a safer community than anything than a bunch of density and a bunch of bike lanes that they keep pushing. I mean, there's so many things that we could focus our efforts and our money and our time on that we're not.
I see bike lanes all over town, but I don't ever see anybody biking in them, And I know right now,
there's a study, 1%.
Right, traffic is an issue, and not just Scottsdale, but in the Phoenix metropolitan area. People want to live in our beautiful state, and they love Maricopa County, and the traffic is becoming an issue. Now they're widening the freeways, and that's fantastic. We have amazing events that come here, Super Bowls and national championships, and it pushes our traffic for sure. Really quick, we've just got a little bit of time left. Is there anything that a city council person can do to help fix traffic in Scottsdale?
Yeah, so right now the biggest way to really help that, I think, is going to be halting all future road diet propositions. If you're not familiar, a road diet is the reduction of a traffic lane in exchange for a bike lane. This is a weird, misguided agenda that's been pushed by a few activists. The problem is the utility of a bike lane is 1%. That's based on a Scottsdale bike study, so this is very specific. So when I ask somebody, are you willing to sacrifice your needs of the 99% for the desires of 1%? The answer is no. every time. It's not good policy. It doesn't make sense for Scottsdale. And what I really appreciate about Scottsdale is the majority of the city was developed post-World War II, which means it was designed for the automobile. If anything, we need to push forward, not backwards, which is exactly what the goal of that is. It wants to make cities more walkable. I'm not here for the 15-minute city. I'm here because I can get my car and I can get somewhere quick. And other than that, I'd say, improve light timing. I mean, I hop on Scottsdale Road. It takes 10, 15 minutes just to get from Thomas to like Camelback. I'm like, what's going on, But, I mean, there's plenty of different places we could work on it. But I would say bike lanes and actively reducing traffic lanes is probably the first place to start.
Excellent, Mason. Such a pleasure having you on the fence. Tell our listeners how they can get more information about you and your campaign. And it comes election time. And if you're the one they want to vote for, how do they find you?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it. You can check out my website at votegates.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram as Vote Gates. You can check out my Twitter at Mason Gates CRE. That'll get you all the information you need to know about me. And hopefully I can receive your vote in the upcoming election.
Thank you, Mason, very much for being on the fence today. Good luck in your campaign and good luck in the upcoming election. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.